Welcome to JR Studio 58A. My name is Vaughn Davis. I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in, especially to everyone joining us online. And like how we have you here, just do us a favor now. Call a friend or 2 or 10 and tell them to just join in the conversation, because we want to have as many people as possible tuning in so we can have a lively discussion. Remember to send in your comments and your questions so we can make this a real interactive session. And today we are talking about politics. And I'm sure that word for many people is an automatic turnoff, but that's why we're having the program. In order to change something, we have to change it. And in order to change it, we have to talk about it. And so we're going to be talking about politics. And today we have a person who is one of the best qualified persons to talk about it with us, Miss Donna Parchment Brown, the Political Ombudsman. Thank you so much for joining us and being here today.
Oh, my pleasure, Vaughn. It's good to be with you and your viewers and listeners in this space.
Wonderful. And let's just begin at the beginning. Let's establish for the viewers what exactly is the role of the Political Ombudsman.
Okay, so the Office of the Political Ombudsman is a commission of Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of commissions like the Children's Advocate, INDECOM, what was the Integrity Commission, and so on. So it was established under the Political Ombudsman Interim Act of 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And just to say, Section 12 of the law really stipulates what the job, what it is, and what we're supposed to do.
Give us an idea.
So I have the law here.
Sure.
You know.
Let's try to not get too much of the
legalese,
but
not legalese.
Can give us an idea what it says, what it lays out for us.
Because the law belongs to the people, and we need to know where things come
people
from.
People need to understand and appreciate,
confidence. Yes. So the Ombudsman is tasked to investigate any action taken by a political party, its members, or supporters, where the Ombudsman is of the opinion that the action might breach any agreement that exists between the political parties. Or if the political ombudsman thinks that the action is likely to prejudice good relations between the supporters of various political parties. And the fact that the matter is before a court does not stop the ombudsman from dealing with it.
Okay.
So we're very optimistic people when we came up with these ideas. We want the politicians to get on and their supporters to be able to coexist peacefully.
And your role is kind of like a referee, so to speak, in that you try and ensure that they maintain a good acceptable relationship with each other as far as the duties are the actual carrying out of their duties of politics are concerned, essentially.
Right, because the investigations and the reports that are submitted to the leaders of the political parties are intended to say, maybe you messed up when you went here. We have talked about it. Here's what we think you can do to correct that problem and to avoid it in the future. Because we want the public to have confidence in the officials of state, and we want the country to be properly run. If the people who are in charge of the country are at loggerheads, or otherwise called daggers drawn, then decisions that need to be made for us are going to be delayed, or they're going to be made on a partisan basis, or they won't be carried out as well as they should be.
Right.
So I'm to help avoid that problem.
You are that voice that are the voice of reason that tries to come through, and you probably, to borrow a thing from one of your previous hats, resolve any disputes.
Exactly.
That might happen. Because for persons who don't know what we're talking, she was formerly the head of the Dispute Resolution Foundation.
I'll take revolution.
Okay, well.
Because really, we need a revolution in how we handle disputes and how we interact with each other.
I'm sure not many people would disagree with her where that one is concerned. Now, I understand that one of the documents that helps to guide how you go about your duties and how you help to regulate the relationship between our political parties is the Agreement and Declaration on Political Conduct, otherwise known as the Code of Political Conduct.
Yes.
Can you give me an idea of what that document is and what it tries to accomplish?
I'm so happy to do that. It's a little document, but it has big ideas. This is a document that after the passing of the Political Ombudsman Act, which was a recognition that we needed an institutional mechanism for dealing with the problems we had, the conversation continued between civil society, communities, and state actors. So on one day in 2005 in Parliament. Parliament was adjourned, and the president of the PNP, the leader of the Jamaica Labour Party, and other officials signed a document. And that document that they signed really was affirming their belief in the sanctity of human life, being opposed to any wrongful act of violence, denouncing guns and the use of guns and ammunition, supporting nonviolence, repudiating actions that would create confrontation, create conflict, saying no to statements from political platforms that would incite violence or be slanderous or which would humiliate political actors and their family members. And most of all, although there are a number of other things, most of all, to be against the thing called political tribalism.
Right.
And if you don't mind, I would just say exactly what they say about that. Right?
Go ahead.
So it's number 7. And to remember that the code of conduct they have agreed to is not for elections. It is for life. 24/7,
essentially general behavior, whether or not there's an election on the horizon or anything like that.
Right. So we know during election there tends to be an escalation of activity.
Right.
But we can see too that outside of election time, many issues arise. And the way we handle those issues from a political point of view should take into account. So right now there is a lot of discussion about what I would call political tribalism.
Definitely.
Right? So the parties are against the practice of political tribalism, which they describe as rooted in coercion, intimidation, or violence. And the parties commit themselves to removing any structures and resisting the development of any behavioral, cultural, social, or organizational practices which reinforce political tribalism.
Okay.
In other words, this document, the politicians were saying, all are we are one. We are Jamaicans. That's the first thing we are.
Well, I'm sure the question that most persons might have to say is, as it's all well and good, but is this something that is really being eliminated? And we'll get to that in a little while longer as the interview progresses, because I want to touch on that. But before we go there, I don't want to switch tack too quickly. Can you talk to us about how you go about investigating the investigating the relationship, or how do you execute your duty to make sure that you're able to bring the political parties to accountability when there are problems?
Yes. One of the things is that the Act says any mechanism that the Ombudsman wishes to use is okay. So there's no stipulated way. What I tend to do is when something arises, and usually something here in the public domain, so it's the media handling something, or it could be a written complaint, because a complaint is something in writing coming from someone affected. Or it could be a report, because sometimes people post things on the Political Ombudsman social media pages, or people may send me an email anonymously, or political actors may write me an official complaint. And based on these different ways, I might send to the party who it is alleged is doing something wrong. I would write them a letter. I would say, you may have breached such and such a section of the code, or such and such a section of the Act, based on this document or this statement or this clipping that I'm attaching to the correspondence. And within that context, I'm inviting you into a meeting with some other members of your party, if you wish.
Okay.
And typically they would come into a meeting. I have had, unfortunately, one or two who have not come.
Okay.
They have not refused to come, but they have, after several invitations, failed to come. And these are people at a level. They're already elected officials sitting in the parliament, or they may be in a high office, and they failed to come after numerous attempts. So they're disregarding their own law.
Okay, so which begs the question of how do you in turn react when you find yourself confronted with these kind of uncooperative persons? I mean, that must make your work very difficult. And at times, people wonder if how much teeth do you have to hold them accountable?
Right. Well, the thing is, the premise on which this system is established is one about collaboration, about leadership. So the expectation is that the leader of the political party, whether it is the most honorable Prime Minister or the leader of the opposition, on receiving correspondence from the Ombudsman regarding an investigation and a need to have people present or a report requiring an action, that they would be even more committed to resolving the issue than the ombudsman. That was the premise on which it was done. I don't believe that we're there.
Okay.
And so that does create some difficulties, yes. And my role is not to create an antagonistic relationship with political actors. That doesn't mean I am afraid or I back down.
Yeah, because I'm sure many persons would feel like maybe you should become a little more antagonistic and I guess forward with them to hold them accountable.
Well, you don't need to be antagonistic to work with people.
Okay.
So I don't operate in a space where what I'm doing is a lot of finger pointing. I prefer to have consultative efforts. Now, for some of the cases that are reported to me, I also have to bring in a number of other people or, do online research. So, for example, we had an issue last year of JPS saying that streetlights were illegally installed in St. Mary.
Yes.
And so I had to bring in a number of people to come in and give their evidence as to what they may or may not know about what transpired. I also had to visit the community, do a walkthrough where I talked to maybe 15 or 20 different people and gleaned from them certain information that helped me know when I'm interviewing somebody else to ask them questions based on the information. That particular investigation is not complete.
Okay.
So we have had other kinds of investigations to do with, say, public utterances, where people have come in, sometimes supported by other people, sometimes on their own. And what I found is a lot of the time the utterances are unthinking.
Right. Definitely.
And I say unthinking. Sometimes they are malicious. Sometimes they are intended to convey.
In the heat of the moment or something like that.
And the trouble is, Vaughn, as we were discussing earlier, if I'm under the influence of alcohol, then I'm drunk and what I say is not reliable. If I'm under the influence of drugs, I'm under the influence and it's not reliable. If I'm just angry, I have total control over what is occurring, because no matter how angry I am, I have to be able to understand the big picture. At the end of the day, as a political actor, your loss of dignity may be what you suffer. Your loss of respect may be what you suffer. But the public suffers a lower level of service.
Right.
Loss of resources.
Right.
So that's why it's so important.
We're talking here with Miss Donna Parchment Brown, the Political Ombudsman. She's here discussing her role as well as the Declaration on Political Conduct and many other things. And we invite you to send in your questions, take advantage of the opportunity to ask her all the questions, get everything you want to know out of her right here. She's right here. It appears that we have some questions online.
Well, I'm so glad because, we have our communications advisor, Ms. Stephanie Smith, at the Office of the Ombudsman, and what she has done is establish social media space. I'm very happy particularly to be with you in that space.
We're glad to have you. Because this is politics, as much as people might be turned off by it, is something that must be discussed in order for it to change, in order for Jamaicans to appreciate the process even more.
Every part of our life is affected by politics.
Well, persons online are asking, who does the Political Ombudsman report to? And can politicians or MPs be fined, as far as you're aware?
That's a great question to start off. The Political Ombudsman furnishes an annual report to Parliament, like the other commissions of Parliament. It's an independent, neutral commission. So when I have completed an investigation, the law requires me to advise the party leader in respect of whose issues there's a complaint of my findings and make recommendations for their action. So that's where my work goes. If I'm not able to get satisfaction through the party leaders, I can submit interim reports to Parliament stating what I've investigated, what my concerns are, and asking Parliament to act upon it. Now, on the matter of fines, I'm so happy that's been raised because my predecessor, Bishop Harold Blair, and myself, this is one of the things we have been stressing, that yes, we think it's a good thing that the premise is that the The leadership will do the right thing and we work collaboratively. But it should be clear from the get-go that breaches of the code of conduct should result in fines and or other penalties.
Some tangible penalties
yes,
that will help
and we're
people
definitely
accountable.
asking that fines be enacted in the law,
Right.
that the code of conduct be attached as part of the law, monitored by the Ombudsman, and that each of the standards set out in there, breach of them should result in a known fine or a range of fines that the Ombudsman would be able to levy against that person and or the party.
And so you're actively lobbying to get that
Yes.
that done?
This has been actually in a number of the annual reports of the Office of the Political Ombudsman over the years. This has been stated as something important. Before the Select Committee on Human Resources, this was also raised by both civil society and the Political Ombudsman. And this is something that I will be writing on in the upcoming report.
All right. Another question here is, what is the size of the staff of the Ombudsman's office?
Thank you so much. We are a tiny office, just 7.
Just 7?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, something a little bit...
Well, let me say beyond that.
Okay.
The JCF provides us with liaison officers. So these are detective sergeants, one in each of the divisions of the JCF. So I have these 14 additional officers who, for example, now with by-elections, they're assigned per division. So they assist me with what's going on across the country. You know, for me, Gordon House is a legislative cathedral. It is a temple of our laws.
Right.
It is a sacred space. Those who are there hold a sacred trust. That means that the way they comport themselves, even in the context of a robust democracy, must not lose sight of the fact that every man, woman, boy and girl in Jamaica, in Jamaica's diaspora, and friends or others who are interested in Jamaica, are looking to them to do what's right by Jamaica. So if I'm discussing glasses and I go off and we are discussing my face, and then glasses gets pushed to the side, that gets us into what I describe as maladministration. So part of the reason for the Ombudsman and the code is that they would be in the habit of knowing what matters. Now, Gordon House has its own ethical and procedural rules. So generally speaking, when there is conduct in the Senate or in the lower house, the Office of the Ombudsman does not interfere.
Okay.
However, I must say I've seen some of that issue taken outside of Gordon House, being discussed on television last night. And so, you know, I think that's something that I would be free to deal with. So to the extent that the parliamentarians continue discussing the matter outside of Gordon House, then it now becomes a matter that, you know, we can talk about. Okay. So what is to be done to them in terms of the ethical rules, that would be for the Speaker and various committees of Parliament. But I join, you know, it's so avoidable. You know, I have said this notion of restraint is sadly lacking in society. Across Jamaica, we see people carrying out acts of violence. We see people on social media saying the most obnoxious things about other people. That's lack of restraint.
All right.
We say things that add no value and do only harm to our own detriment. Everybody who misbehaves should be now saying, my goodness, if my mother was sitting in front there, or my child,
would she be proud of what my behavior at this particular moment?
And the fact is, they're seeing it on social media or on television. So there's no private space in Jamaica.
That's true.
Parliament is not private; it is the ultimate public space.
So I think following on that, it's a good segue into the issue of tribalism and asking the question of where do you think we are with that topic in Jamaica, and how are we making efforts to reduce it, especially through your office?
I think there has been an escalation of political tribalism.
Oh, escalation?
Escalation of political tribalism.
Okay.
Since I've been in office. We know people have their party positions, they support who they support, but the level of gratuitous attack and destruction on one another, I think, is really at a high. That is intolerable. Now, it's manifested in many ways. It's manifested in the issue of whether we're using public resources for partisan purposes.
Mm-hmm.
It's reflected in where we locate public resources. It's manifested in whether we are calling people by party colors and saying they're permitted in space X or space Y.
Mm-hmm.
It's shown when we're having a by-election and people are threatened for putting up one color while another color proliferates.
Okay.
Even the use of the way the flags and so on are used in the election becomes tribalistic when the community says, I don't want a big sign at my gate or at the entrance to my community declaring X or Y.
Mm-hmm.
And a candidate feels that, you have no right to that opinion. And then to compound it, when the election is over, weeks and months later,
it's
still there. And their party leaders, the head of the party, does not hold the party to a standard that says, we will clean up.
So
we will not put up in this way.
So through you, what do we do? We as the public are look to you to ask, what do we do?
Right.
So what do we do?
So what the Ombudsman does and continues to do is to write to these persons. And this is why the question of levying fines has now come up, because the other system hasn't worked.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I remember for the first election, there were some huge signs that were not removed after the election. And I was able to write to the local authority, which has control over signs. If you're going to have a dance, you have to get their permission to put up the signs.
Right.
It's for a limited period and you pay for it. If you're a political actor, the law exempts you from needing to do that. But it is for a limited period. So the local authority really has the power to say to the person, you are defacing now. You are creating a litter problem. And so I was able, working with a local authority, to get a huge billboard removed.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that some of the politicians, when they are very angry, some really consider that I'm attacking them personally when I ask them to take down these materials. Okay. I've had some very unpleasant exchanges, but I've had to stand my ground on behalf of the Jamaican people. So by and large, within a moderate time, most of it is removed.
Okay. Well, Miss Donna Parchment Brown, she's here live in studio with us. She's taking some very strong positions on the country's politics, but we're glad to have her, glad to hear her opinions. Ms. Parchment Brown, now, in doing research for this interview and so on, one of the questions that consistently comes up among members of the public is that they don't necessarily feel like this office is necessary. Right. How do you manage the sentiment that the office should be closed down and put one side? How do you manage that? I'm sure you encounter it from time to time.
I've seen that sentiment on social media, and I've seen it a few times by individuals. Mm-hmm. But I am living in a country where I go everywhere. Mm-hmm. If I'm at the supermarket, if I'm at church, if I go to a function, if I go to a party, if I stop at the gas station, somebody comes up to me, Miss Donna Parchment Brown, I'm praying for you. Miss Donna Parchment Brown, we need what you're doing. Don't let them bully you. Mm-hmm. Miss Donna and they call out my whole name, right? And for me,
Brown, right?
Yeah, the full name. I'm surprised that so everybody knows that full name. And so I recognize that there is a great alienation from the political process because we see the turnout for elections. But a lot of that alienation is playing out in other spaces. I understand that people may be disappointed that there's still this conduct even with the office in place. Mm-hmm. You asked me earlier about the size of the office. The office has 8 staff, and including office attendant, driver, and so on.
Okay, yes.
And we have been trying in the last, since I've come into office, one of the things I've tried to do is increase public knowledge of the office. Because I think people are really not that knowledgeable about what it is, what it does. When things happen, I know people call me and sometimes I'm in the media talking about it. But not everything that we do is in the public domain.
That's true.
And so because, you see a percentage of what we do, the other things we're doing are having an impact on the practice of. before I took office, for 2 years we were without a political ombudsman.
Right. Yes, that's
So
true.
that also meant that, and we were not in an election season at the time either. So people got accustomed to doing certain things without anybody calling them to book. So that transition now to holding oneself accountable. They always used to sign the code before an election, and I've really ratcheted that up by asking the custos of each parish to host a signing ceremony and to go through the code with the candidates. And one of the reasons we do that is because we think a lot of people end up getting into trouble doing things that they just never
They
thought
just didn't
about
know,
it,
right, yeah.
right? And so in the heat of the moment or in the fun of the thing, they do a number of things. We are very concerned about inappropriate use of public resources. We're very concerned about people feeling like they can't talk, right?
Or, express,
Express
opposition
their
to any
opinion,
kind of...
right, either pro or con. We're concerned that on matters of public interest, when people express a viewpoint, they then get labeled in a political way. So the content of their commentary, which could benefit decision making in the country, gets lost.
skewed.
Yes. So I appreciate that there are some people who may be needing or wanting more of me and the office than they're getting. I believe that as we push forward, they will see that we are making a difference. And I think in a number of issues that's been demonstrated already.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just want to say, right now we have on our social media pages a survey that we're conducting.
Okay.
We have put up 2 questions already. We're going to put 2 more questions up because we want feedback on whether people believe we have garrisons, because some people say we don't have no garrison again.
Okay.
If there are garrisons, what do we think could be done about that? And we're going to be putting up another question asking them, where are the garrisons?
So
If
what
you-
about those who say those are rhetorical questions?
You've seen that.
Yeah.
Yes. Some people say that's rhetorical because they say we all know it's there. But remember, part of my approach and part of Jamaica's approach is a thing called consultation, public consultation. So we don't want individuals or institutions to say they know the answers. So when I write a document later on or I take steps, I want to be able to say, when the survey was done, many of you said, it's rhetorical because you felt that it's so embedded and almost impossible to move. So I want to be able to honor and respect that in the steps we take.
Okay.
And also people know things,
Well, that's true.
from
They
where
might
they
ventilate
sit.
from their position might
Exactly.
be different from what the public might think is really the situation.
And where they can do it anonymously and you still value it and use it. I've also had face-to-face consultations with experts and thinkers on the area and young people, and we intend to roll out into some community conversations, because without getting rid of political tribalism, all the problems we're talking about will continue. The election center now is a great innovation of the Electoral Commission. I don't know if your listeners and viewers have heard about the election center,
Well,
but
let them know, give them
Okay.
an update.
so on every nomination day and election day, at the Red Hills Road office of the Electoral Commission, a certain number of people gather. I co-chair with the Director of Elections this meeting, and we have present the Broadcasting Commission, Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches, National Integrity Action, CAFE, Jamaica Defence Force, Jamaica Constabulary Force, high-level
wide stakeholder
representatives.
group.
Yes. We sit together from usually 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and we receive calls and reports and complaints from the areas, and then we call on our resources in the area to verify or to act on the problem. So that is how we have been able, with the leadership of the EOJ, to minimize issues on election day
Okay.
and on nomination days. And it's things like people having on campaign shirts and trying to go into the voting area, or people getting bad information, or people having a scuffle down the road. That means that people from this area don't want to come in
Right.
because they're observing. So that's going to be
up
the
and
main
running,
thing.
and
That's
it's
up and
providing.
running in the 26 2016 general elections, the election center actually met in an extra meeting where we asked the Commissioner of Police to stop campaigning in one of the divisions in one of the constituencies in a parish. So there is some power to do something within that period. And of course, the constituted authority sits at the election center as well, which is the commissioners of the Electoral Commission Plus. And they have the power to halt an election depending on the reports that come in. Yes,
ladies and gentlemen, Miss Donna Parchment Brown, once again, as she's talking to us and just going through us with many aspects of the political process. Much to learn from, much to hear about. And I hope you are taking in what she has to say and appreciating the points that she's making. Now, Ms. Parchment Brown, to wrap, I just have one question to ask, which is basically, how are you working to bring the message of this change in our political process to the young generation, the ones that are coming up, so that they can have that shift and hopefully migrate the process away from the antagonistic way the state it seems to be in now?
I'm so inspired by the outcomes from our project or program, really, that we have initiated at the office. It's called Conversations with Young Jamaicans. So far, I think we have gone to about 10 learning institutions, high schools and colleges, where we have had, say, typically about a 3-hour session with students, typically between 15 and 19 years of age, where we have talked about Jamaica's political process, introduced some of them to a number of new things, and heard from them about the standards for political practice, and also heard from them about the issues they have as young people and their opinion about politics. Now, I am inspired by the fact that many of them are interested in coming into politics.
Coming into politics,
okay. Serving in politics, but far more are turned off or not impressed by the political service. And also there is some level of fear about what you can do as an ordinary person if you're not satisfied. So young people talked about problems with water, problem with jobs, problem with recreational areas, problems with the school plan that they're going, problems with health care, inaccessibility of their elected officials, both the local and the constituency level, dismay at some of the things they're seeing and hearing by politicians as they carry out their duties.
Right, yes.
So we have encouraged them to do things like do letters to their elected officials. So if you have a problem, write a letter that's respectful and polite, but which sets out clearly what your concern is and what you would like to see them do. And we have said, by providing your elected officials with these kinds of letters, when they come to a meeting, say, of the Constituency Development Fund, or they come to do the sectoral debate, they are able to say, 30 young people in my community are concerned about this issue, and they've written to me, and I want to bring that to Jamaica's attention.
And they are the future future voters, I should say.
And they're just on the cusp.
Their opinions are very, very relevant.
Very relevant and helpful, you know, because we are older, and there's a lot of value in what we have learned over the years. But they bring a freshness to these issues that I think very beneficial if we listen. So we have tried to listen. We do a survey, we collate their information, which is one of the reasons why we're pushing forward. Many of them have said they want an opportunity to be more involved. That's why we're doing more on social media.
Persons are asking, are there ways for you to create public partnerships with the office, partnerships that can help you better meet your mandate, accomplish your objectives, that kind of thing? What kind of partnerships are you looking for, if any, or what are you open to?
I'm just really totally open to any process that engages more Jamaicans, individually or institutionally, because the job of the office is to investigate. That also means people willing to provide information, even if it's anonymous, that I can then use to expand an investigation. I do believe the public education aspect, which is really an area I'm pushing, is of crucial importance, because our people have established institutions, and whether the institutions appear to be working effectively or not may in part relate to how well we know the institutions and how much we use them. So public education. So I would love I would accept an invitation to speak to any group, anywhere, anytime, to understand what their issues and concerns are, and to be able to relate that to the work of the political actors and my office, and also to provide them with brochures and other material that they may use for public discussions, hot debates, any other way. So I welcome that.
I think now is a good time for you to look into that camera and tell persons what your contact information is. How can they reach out to you? How can they talk to you? How can they get in contact with you and communicate?
The Office of the Political Ombudsman is located at 85 A Duke Street, Kingston. It's next door to Gordon House in the JMA building. Now, we are listed in the telephone book, and you can find us there, Political Ombudsman. We are also on social media. If you put in Political Ombudsman, I think there's at Twitter, Political Ombudsman, Instagram, and I think the email is politicalombudsman@yahoo.com, and our numbers are listed in the phone book. I think you may have the numbers there, Vaughn.
All right, yes, I have them on the card here, if I may. You are 922-0317. Thank you to our technical producers providing that number, 922-0317. Right, and fax, for those of you who still use fax, is 922-1040. And it is politicalombudsman@yahoo.com. And on Facebook, Office of the Political Ombudsman. So there are many avenues for you to reach out, get in contact, share your opinions, and just find ways to partner. Yes. As she says, the office is more than welcome to partner with anybody who's willing to help them accomplish their objective.
And if you see me in the supermarket or at a dance, don't hesitate.
A dance? Well, there you go. No problem. You might just see her. Who knows? I didn't know she went to dances, but hey. I mean, that might just be the place.
Jamaican.
All right. I think on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for participating. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, sent in comments. We really appreciate it. This is, after all, your forum to interact with our members of government and get your opinions, share, exchange opinions, ask your questions, seek to further understanding. And we thank you so much for joining us. I am Vaughn Davis. We do this most Thursdays. This is Studio 58A Live. Thank you and have a good day.